demand, what they do is they set marginal cost equal to marginal revenue. So what I need to do for this in order to solve the San Francisco guy's problem is I need to figure out what marginal revenue is for San Francisco monopolist, right? I know how to figure out marginal revenue curves. They have the same intercept as the demand curve, but twice the slope, right? So San Francisco, intercept is at 40. X-intercept, or quantity intercept, is at 40. So the marginal revenue starts at 40, twice the slope, intersects at 20. So the marginal revenue curve for San Francisco person goes from 40 to 20 right here, has twice the slope of the demand curve. So let's label this one as SF2. What just happened? SF. All right? So what does this SF person do? The SF monopolist sets its marginal revenue curve equal to marginal cost. Okay, so that means marginal cost equals marginal revenue. The optimal output quantity is going to be this quantity right here. It's going to produce 10 units and going to go up to San Francisco's demand to charge $30. Okay, so this here is going to be the price for San Francisco, and this here is going to be the quantity for San Francisco too. That was pretty neat. And now this is why this picture is so awesome. You're seeing it already, or despairing about it. Either way is great. So this is the demand curve for London. You're not really seeing the intercept right here, but I'm telling you that it intercepts on the x-axis at exactly 100. How do I know it? Because I drew its corresponding marginal revenue curve, and it intersects at 50, right? So I'm going to figure out what the marginal revenue curve is for London's demand, twice the slope, same y-intercept. It intersects at 50 right here. So the London monopolist is going to also set his or her marginal cost curve equal to its marginal revenue curve. Oh, wow. It just also happens to be at $10. That's a pure coincidence. Not, right? So the London's optimal output choice here is going to be 10 units as well. So QSF and Q London. My handwriting is deteriorating. I'm apologizing. But what price is the London monopolist going to be able to charge? Is he going to be able to charge $30? That's the wrong answer. No is the right answer, right? Follow the steps, right? The steps are set marginal cost equal to marginal revenue, figure out what quantity is, and then go up to the relevant demand curve, London demand curve, and go across and figure out what price is. So London monopolist is going to be able to charge about $23. Two monopolists with identical marginal cost curves working in different markets, right? One with an elastic demand curve, one with a less elastic demand curve. The monopolist operating in the market with a less elastic demand curve is able to charge a huge markup, right? His marginal cost at $10 is exactly $20. The price he gets for it is $30. So the markup is going to be $10. The Lerner index is going to be 30 minus 20. So we have a 10 over 30, right? 1/3. For this person right here, it's going to be 23. So he or she can only charge a $3 markup. So 3 over 23 is going to be, a little bit less than a 7, closer to an 8. So the point here is the degree of market power that a monopolist can exercise doesn't really depend on how evil the monopolist is, because the monopolist is not evil, right? He or she is a profit-maximizing firm, but it depends fully on how elastic or inelastic demand really is, right? So for example, do you think a monopolist in the market for insulin would be able to exercise a lot of market power? Yes, right? Almost perfectly inelastic demand. So if you let a monopolist operate in that particular market, the monopolist would have an incentive to almost charge infinity, right? So that's a bit of an issue. In the market for cigarettes, for example, do you think a monopolist in the market for cigarettes or other addictive substances would be able to command a big markup? Yes, right? So markets with very inelastic demand curves, if you have a monopolist operating in those markets, you end up having outcomes where markups are usually relatively sizable, right? So it depends on the price elasticity of demand. This yogurt theorem is just awesome. Somebody called it the yogurt theorem. That's fine with me too, right? There was an explanation too, because there's Greek yogurt and there's regular yogurt, and Greek yogurt is less elastic than regular yogurt, and Greek yogurt's more expensive than regular yogurt, therefore you get screwed by buying Greek yogurt. So that was the yogurt theorem. Not as good as mine, but not bad. Okay, so source of market power. Where does this market power come from, right? It can come from a variety of sources. The first sources of market power are the reasons for why demand may be inelastic, okay? Demand is inelastic if consumers are willing to pay virtually anything for a good. What I mean by that is if you need to get the stuff, if you're an insulin-dependent diabetic, you need to get injections or you die, right? So you need the stuff. So if there's a monopolist there, demand for the substance is inelastic and you can charge whatever markup you want, pretty much, unless government steps in to regulate. Demand is inelastic if there are no close substitutes, right? While you are willing to pay virtually anything for a good, if there's a close substitute for insulin, which is not quite as good, but almost as good, but you could switch to the other thing, the insulin for producing firms' ability to actually charge whatever price at once goes down significantly. So if there are no close substitutes, also if there's no entry, right? If you don't allow firms to enter markets, if you allow for physical reasons, right? Sorry, not allow is the wrong word here. Let me slow down. Here we go. If for physical reasons, firms can't enter markets, right? For example, there's only a certain type of natural resource in one area, and you can't just open up another mine because there's just no stuff in the ground, right? That may mean there's no entry for physical reasons, and we're going to talk about other forms of no entry in a little bit, where government simply outlaws entry into certain markets and gives firms the right to act as a monopolist, and there may be good reason for doing it. The next reason that firms may have market power or demand may be relatively inelastic here is similar firms are really far away. It's movie theaters. There's usually in most sort of regular-sized town, there's one movie theater, and the market is certainly converging into an equilibrium where most towns have one megaplex or whatever they call it that plays very few good movies and a lot of junk, right? I'm sorry, Hollywood. And independent movie theaters are disappearing. But what you've got is, each town has one movie theater, and you have to drive really far. In some cases, if you live in rural America, maybe 30, 40 to 100 miles to the next movie theater. So the movie theater has a monopoly over the local movie market, movie on-screen market. And the other reason maybe this relates to the close substitutes argument here is other firms' products are simply very different, right? You may have a product that has substitute, but the product is different enough that to you it isn't really a close substitute. And we'll talk about this a lot, where firms engage proactively in trying to make their product seem different from their competitors in ways that just purely exist in your mind. Who here thinks they can taste the difference between Dasani and Arrowhead water? Yeah? Okay, I'm going to take you up on that next time. You're going to lose that bet. It's got to, so what I'm going to say is that I'm going to have a couple of people taste it, and I'm going to say they're going to do worse than 50-50. All right, so you can't do it. But in your mind, once you have the bottle in your hand, there's a recognition of the square-shaped water bottle that feels so nice and awkward and cold in the movie theater and has a sticker on it that you can peel off. Right? That's very different from the other one that's round, and you can't peel off the sticker, but you have to like use your keys to cut off the label. So there's all these things where in your mind you are trained to believe that certain products are different from each other, when actually it's brought down to a blind taste test. You can't tell the difference between the things. So there are, and we will tell you why firms have an incentive to behave in this way, and it's called monopolistic competition or product differentiation, and that also has to do with something. Has to do with toothpaste. What are you talking about, toothpaste, Max? Have you guys bought toothpaste lately at Safeway or at what's it called, CVS? It's nuts. I mean, the number of different brands and types of toothpaste, I find it amazing, and I will explain to you why that is the case. Okay, the thing we haven't really yet talked about is, Max, I get it, right? The monopolist is maximizing profits, but the monopolist, is he or she really bad, right? Are there negative welfare impacts of having a monopolist operate in a market? And the answer is yes, right? And I can't just say yes and have you believe this, because you are Berkeley undergraduates and you have a right to be explained why this is the case. So let's figure this out, okay? Here's my price. Here's my quantity, and I don't want to use green. Let's draw this to scale. Demand, marginal revenue. I do this fast now, and you will be able to do this fast too. Thanks, Surface. There we go. Marginal revenue, this is demand. Let me draw you a nice, simple, linear marginal cost curve. What the monopolist does is sets marginal cost equal to marginal revenue. This is what the monopolist produces. This is the price he or she charges, where the welfare maximizing outcome is one where marginal cost equals price. And we know that demand is the function that determines price. So the welfare maximizing outcome is where marginal cost equals price, or marginal cost equals demand. This here is P star, Q star. Okay, so what we're going to show quickly is we're going to compare welfare at Q star to the welfare at QM, and I'm going to show you that social welfare at QM is less than at Q star. You could try and convince yourself that the welfare maximizing output is greater than Q star, and I will tell you that you will fail for the same reasons we showed this on midterm 2 and in our review session. You can't do better than Q star where price equals marginal cost. Okay, so consumer surplus, producer surplus, welfare at Q star versus QM, and then we'll put the change right here. The pizza slices I'm going to use are big A, big B, C, D, E. So B is this rectangle. Whoa. It's warm in here, isn't it? Try making sense when you're really, really warm. It's not really easy. That's right, Max. You're not making any sense. Empirical evidence. Okay. So A, B, C, D, and E. So what's consumer surplus at P star, Q star? The answer is going to be A plus B plus D. Producer surplus is going to be C plus E. So total welfare is A, B, C, D, and E. Now at the monopolist output level, the relevant quantity is QM. The price is going to be P or PM up there. So consumer surplus is going to be the area between demand and price over the range of consumption here. So it's going to be A. So consumers lose B and D. The monopolist gets P dollars over QM units above marginal cost. So it's the distance between price and marginal cost over the range of consumption, B plus C. So the monopolist gains B, loses E. Total welfare is A, B, C. And society loses D and E. So deadweight loss is going to be D and E. Pretty straightforward. What the monopolist does is he produces less than the socially optimal output level, and there's deadweight loss. Right? It's just another way to produce less than what the price equals marginal cost output level would be. Very similar picture that we drew initially when we motivated deadweight loss, and we simply said, what if you produce less than the perfectly competitive outcome? Okay, so the answer to everything that economists propose are taxes, right? And the answer to that is no, right? Taxes aren't a solution to everything. They're a great solution, as we'll see, to the externality, the negative externality problem. But maybe taxing a monopolist is going to make things maybe not perfect, but slightly better. Well, that turns out to be just a silly idea. But let me show you why. Price. Okay, let's tax this monopolist. Here's demand. Here's my marginal cost. Here's my marginal revenue. That boring? So the monopolist sets quantity where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, QM, charges this nice price up here, PM. And we have, as we just showed, a deadweight loss of this, right? That was what we essentially just drew. Now I'm going to tax this monopolist. I'm going to shift up my marginal cost curve, parallel. So this here is tau. Okay, this monopolist now sets his new marginal cost curve equal to marginal revenue, produces QM tau, and charges, let's call this PM tau. So what happened? Are we producing more or less than the monopolist left alone? Less, right? But the monopolist left alone already produced too little, right? We know that the optimal output quantity is this one. So what you're doing is by taxing the monopolist, you want to move the monopolist this way, right? You want him to produce more, but by taxing the monopolist, you're shifting up the marginal cost curve and you're moving him further away from the optimal output level. What you could show if you wanted, which I'm not going to trouble you with here, but will rather reserve for a nice little problem set question to get you ready for the final, is you could show that the deadweight loss grows by the green amount, okay? additional deadweight loss from tax. Okay, so taxing a monopolist makes things even worse. So what could you do? Yeah, does that seem like a politically feasible option? You have a monopolist who's charging really high prices and producing suboptimal output levels, and a policymaker comes through and says we should subsidize this monopolist. You're laughing out loud. That's the response. From an economic point of view, that's not a terrible idea. From a political economy point of view, good luck with that. Try and run for an election saying we want to subsidize monopolists. That would be good. Okay, so monopolists, again, back to this notion, why have we historically observed monopolists? Well, they control a key input, right? If you're the only person with diamond mines, you're a monopolist in the diamond market. You may simply be better at producing or distributing something. So you may have figured out how to program spiders and bought up everybody who knew how to program spiders and not told anybody how to do it. So you have a monopoly on spider-driven search engines. Or there's something called substantial economies of scale. These are natural monopolies, and we'll finish that after the next picture. We'll call it a day. But these are firms that have decreasing average costs pretty much everywhere. That means one really large firm can produce total market output at a lower cost than two firms half its size, right? So larger firms can produce output more cheaply. So what does that look like? That looks like this. Average cost, marginal costs, output. So a natural monopoly is a firm whose average cost over a reasonable range of productions looks something like this. This is the typical increasing returns to scale picture I drew for you a couple of months ago. Not months, weeks ago. So average costs are dropping everywhere. So one firm producing 8 units has these average costs versus two firms producing 4 units have these average costs. So one really big firm can do much lower cost production than two firms half its size. So what you will get in markets that have these natural monopolies, you will get really big firms. So if they are not monopolies, right, if we're saying what's the social optimal output level, well, demand equals marginal cost. This Q star here would be what we're arguing is the socially optimal output level and price. Right? Price equals marginal cost. This is demand here. So this is welfare maximizing. What's the problem with that? You're like, I want to get out of here, Max. I know. Average cost of production here at Q star is higher than the price that firms get per unit. That means if we somehow force firms to produce at the socially optimal output level and charge marginal costs, they're going to bring home negative profits in the shaded area amount, right? So increasing returns to scale firms, if we force them to produce a socially welfare maximizing amount of output and charge marginal costs, they're going to lose money. So what we allow these firms to do, and examples of these are utilities, cable companies and so on, is we allow them to earn a reasonable rate of return and essentially charge a price above marginal cost, enough for them to break even and exist, because a world with sewage being piped from houses into a sewage treatment plant is better than a world without such firms. All right, on that note, I will see you on Tuesday. Yes. Oh, exams. If you didn't pick up your exam, Walter, right up here has your exams.